Hello, class of 2021. Welcome graduates, welcome families, friends, and loved ones. My name is Christine Harold. I'm professor and chair of the Department of Communication, and I am delighted to be among the first to congratulate you at this amazing time for each of you individually during a historical context that none of us is likely to forget. It's been such a pleasure to have some of you in my classes over the years, or to see you in the hallways of the communications building, to hear your speeches in Red Square, hear about your internships, your awards, your goals, and your post-graduation plans. For my colleagues and me, it's been a privilege to have all of you as members of the communication community, especially this year. Your resilience, compassion, persistence, and good humor in the face of a world seemingly turned upside down has been incredibly inspiring. I know this isn't the kind of ceremony you or your loved ones would have chosen, nor would we. Like your families, we were all looking forward to those handshakes and high fives and hugs as you crossed the stage to accept your diploma. Although celebrating remotely may not have been anyone's first choice, I guarantee you that this is definitely a day that we'll all remember. I hope that your time at the University of Washington, and in the Department of Communication in particular, has lit a fire in you that will carry you on to your next adventure, be that the career of your dreams, advocating for causes that you care about, cultivating meaningful relationships, or leading others toward a more just and equitable future. That said, this year has been hard, and it's possible that the flames of your ambition feel tentative right now, and perhaps you're even feeling a little burned out. If that's the case, please know that this is temporary and that you're not alone. If that's you, I encourage you to give yourself space to breathe, to rest, and to reflect. Fires need oxygen to grow, and I assure you that if you nurture the embers that are undoubtedly within you, inspiration will come knocking soon enough. Perhaps your fire is burning bright and full of energy, but feels somewhat directionless at the moment and at the mercy of winds that are beyond your control. If that's you, you are also not alone. I encourage you to see if you can quiet yourself from time to time and stoke the coals of your own wisdom. Fire needs boundaries or containers in order to remain healthy rather than destructive. Keeping yourself on your chosen path requires discipline, not a harsh, inflexible discipline that judges and punishes, but a consistent, reliable structure of good habits, focused work, and supportive relationships that provide a practical architecture that channels you toward your goals. Fire metabolizes. The more we tend to our inner home fire, the less susceptible we are to the whirlwinds of information, opinions, hot takes, hype campaigns, or trending this and viral that, the stories of other people. We can consume these materials, but we can process them critically, honing our capacity to discern the useful from the unuseful, the kind from the bigoted, and the truth from the fiction. Finally, fire also warms. It draws people together in community. For so many of us, this has been a year of isolation, of distance, and of remote everything. But we've also found novel ways to come together and to enjoy the warm glow of fellowship, shared learning, and collaborative work. Whatever the platform, virtual, IRL, or otherwise, I encourage you to continue fostering your personal and professional connections from a place of warmth and authenticity. We've learned that we need each other more than we may have realized, and that despite how you might sometimes feel, you are not alone. We are proud to call you graduates of the Department of Communication at the University of Washington, and we invite you to bask in the warmth of this community for many years to come. We're happy for you, we are proud of you, we believe in you, and we can't wait to see what you do next. Congratulations. It is now my great honor to introduce today's commencement speaker, selected by a group of our own communication graduates. Dr. Vin Gupta of UW's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation has, this year, become a household name to the millions of us who have turned to him for the clear and sound explanations he has offered throughout the COVID-19 pandemic on outlets such as CNN, MSNBC, The Today Show, Al Jazeera, CBS News, and more. Dr. Gupta is a Harvard-trained critical care pulmonologist, and in addition to his work for the University of Washington, he serves as the current Chief Medical Officer of COVID-19 response for Amazon and served as Health and COVID Response Advisor to the Biden-Harris transition team and to the Seattle Mariners and the Seattle Seahawks. Although I'm not sure Dr. Gupta ever dreamed that his expertise as a pulmonologist would thrust him into the national spotlight as one of our most trusted sources on public health, he has stepped into the role brilliantly. He communicates with a clarity of purpose and authority earned through an esteemed body of work, and with a passionate and compassionate commitment to ensuring that scientific fact and evidence-based truth prevail in a time of uncertainty, political posturing, and rampant disinformation. As we begin to take our first steps toward emerging from the worst of this pandemic, at least here in the US, the information and insights that Dr. Gupta continues to offer are as important as ever. Dr. Gupta's advocacy for sound public health information and policy demonstrates the crucial role that good, ethical communication plays in our public sphere. As we have seen this year in so many ways, thoughtful, factual, empathetic communication literally has the capacity to save lives. I'm incredibly grateful to Dr. Gupta for making the time to speak to us today, and I am honored to turn the virtual mic over to him now. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Vin Gupta.
Hi, everybody. It's an honor to be here to speak to you on your special day, one of the most special days in your life, and your graduation day from college. I'm really excited to be able to talk to future leaders in communications, whether you're going to be the future press secretary for the United States and for a future president, or public-facing spokesperson for a major company, or a journalist. You are entering a field that has never been more important than it is right now. And frankly, for the next several years, if not decades, communications, how we communicate to the public, what we say, how we say it, that has been, as the last 16 months of this pandemic has shown, there's frankly been nothing more important than effective communication, clear, crisp, evidence-based, coming from effective messengers. And so I'm super excited for all of you to be entering this space. There's never been a better time. I know college has been unexpected for all of you, especially going through a socially distant senior year, probably parts of your junior year, frankly. So a lot of unexpected twists and turns for sure, but you are going to be rewarded with a job market that's going to be robust, people craving your skill sets, opportunities through the roof. And so to that end, I'd like to talk about some of the things that I've learned being on various platforms, both locally and nationally, talking to people about complicated issues like COVID and how they can keep themselves and their loved ones safe. So I'm going to present a few strategies here that I hope might be helpful. And I encourage you to please reach out to me at vgupta, VGUPTA, at uw.edu, vgupta, if you have any questions, because it's impossible for me to get across all these points in just a few minutes. And so I know if you have questions, if you're looking for a mentor, for somebody to help just be a guidepost, I've had a lot of mentors help me. So I definitely want to pay it forward to the extent I can. Please do reach out. So to that end, these are the strategies that I'd like to discuss today in a very concise period of time. Confidence over certainty, providing actionable advice, meeting people where they are, leading with storytelling, channeling empathy, and staying helpful. I'm going to lead with confidence over certainty. I wanted to first discuss this concept of confidence over certainty and why I think it's important for all of us to get this right and to understand exactly what I'm referencing here, which is the way we've been talking about the vaccine. We've been trying to communicate scientific certainty. And yet what we really needed to communicate was just confidence. What are we confident about? And you'll see this is from the New York Times, this headline about AstraZeneca being 79% effective. And I took issue with this. I tweeted about this on social media and about how just fundamentally this was not the right headline for the moment. Effectiveness is, in my view, what we're confident about. Scientific effectiveness, what does that actually mean? It means, does the vaccine keep you out of the hospital in a real world setting? That's actually the definition of what we mean when we say vaccine effectiveness. Vaccine efficacy is, well, does the vaccine prevent mild illness, asymptomatic illness, or does it keep you out of the ICU? And yes, AstraZeneca was 79% efficacious, but it's actually 100% effective at keeping you out of the hospital. And yet a major news outlet and many others, I'm just picking on the New York Times here, but a major news outlet said it was 79% effective. It's actually 100% effective. And that's the message we needed to get out to people, and we didn't. Why does this matter? All of you are going into a space that requires a skill set. It requires an important skill set where you understand nuance, but only communicate what's necessary. So you understand complexity, but you don't communicate complexity. You communicate what others need to know to get a point across, to inform people. That's the point, at least, of scientific communication and effective scientific communication. And this is how some scientists like to talk about the vaccines, for example. Well, Sputnik is 92% effective against the B117 variant, but then it's only 43% effective against the B1351 variant. It just doesn't make any sense. It's really confusing. We've seen some people on national platforms try to actually walk people through this data in real time. And all it does is confuse people. We really need to focus in on what's critical to communicate to people, what we're confident about, and not focus so much on scientific certainty, which is this table. This is really important here when it comes to how we think about effective ways of communication. And I wanted to bring this slide along because I think this is really a helpful way to think about effective communication. That sometimes it's not me yapping to you or you talking to other people, but it's effectively utilizing social media, or it's effectively utilizing graphics and visuals to convey something that might take 100 words. What I'm trying to convey here, and I posted this on Twitter, these are CT scans from a patient of mine, and the patient on the right had severe pneumonia from COVID-19. The lungs on the left are just normal lungs. Those are healthy lungs. And the point here was, well, all the vaccines in the United States are nearly 100% effective at preventing your lungs from looking like the lungs on the right. And it's a lot easier to show it than it is to say it, especially in a space where politics and division and hesitancy reign. Sometimes you just need to level set with a picture. And so it's just to say that when we're talking about confidence versus certainty, about what you should be communicating to people and what's a complex space, use every medium available to you. Don't just talk. Don't just assume the written word or the spoken word is going to be effective enough. Use every tool available to you. Video, compelling footage, or graphics in this case, because that can really get the point across really effectively. I won't spend a ton of time here, but one key piece of trust, and something I try to do whenever I have a platform, is to build as much trust as I can with the invisible audience that I know might be watching. And a part of that, depending on what direction you take your career, a part of that's going to be giving people actionable advice. Of course, if you're a journalist reporting the news, you have to stay within the boundaries of what your job description is. But I do think that there's an ability for all of us in the space of communications to give people actionable advice, recommendations on what they can do to keep themselves safe in this instance or to seek out therapy. I didn't always do this. I was initially the person that would go on air and just talk about how bad things were. And I recognized that at some point that was actually weakening my ability to gain the trust of the individual on the other side of the screen. That they didn't want to just hear bad news. They needed hope. They needed advice to stay safe. And so democratizing access to information that either might be complex or hard to understand that would give people useful information to seek out therapies, in this case, monoclonal antibodies, is a good way to build trust, because then people say, well, he's looking out for me. She's looking out for me. And there's information asymmetries that exist all over the world, especially in the space of healthcare, where there is information that's available only to those with internet or those who understand complex language or who know where to look. This isn't just COVID and monoclonal antibodies. There's many paradigms for this. So the more that you focus in on addressing these asymmetries in access to good information, I guarantee you that's going to allow you to build a greater viewership or an audience that might be reading or listening to your work, because it's going to cause them to trust you even more. You know, another key piece of building trust is trying to meet people where they are. Here is a picture of a group of us helping the Mariners do a safe restart, thinking about a safe restart at T-Mobile Park. And one of our guiding principles was understanding that people were going to go to the ballpark. They were going to travel. They were going to do things that for many months we were saying, please don't do. And it afforded an opportunity for us to continue to reach them. You know, these individuals who, for example, may not want to get the vaccine or were unwilling to wear a mask, this was a great opportunity to say, well, hey, you can do this, but you can do it even more safely if you come vaccinated, or if you continue to mask and if you continue to distance. That there was an opportunity to provide incentives now so that people could do the right thing to protect themselves and others while enjoying the things that they've long enjoyed doing. So again, meeting people where they are and framing communications in terms that are recognizable to them, that are attractive to them, can help you achieve your own aims. This is another picture of a colleague of mine just recently with the Mariners and their clubhouse talking to the players. And one of the strategies that I've tried to use, whether it's talking to professional athletes or workforces, is leading with storytelling. And I cannot tell you how important this strategy is in trying to reach people, in trying to make something real, and trying to build emotional vulnerability. Those are key tactics that you have to lean into, especially when some of you, I'm sure, are going to be delving into complex spaces like public health communications or politics and political communications, you name it. Telling stories is a great way to make something feel real to the person who might be listening to you, who's resistant to hearing your upshot. And so this is just an example of, I've tried to use social media to the extent possible to amplify what I hope is good information. But in speaking to younger audiences like yourself, talking about how COVID is actually impacting young people, not just saying it, citing the statistics and finger wagging at you, but citing specific examples and talking about them in real ways. It's not always going to work. It may not work to some of you listening to me right now, but it's better than just citing statistics and finger wagging, which is what I think often happens when you're trying to tell people what they should do for their own benefit. There's a lot of finger wagging that goes on, especially to younger generations. And I'm sure a lot of you are tired of that. And so leading with storytelling, really vital. Sharing this, just in sort of marching through different organizations and talking about COVID and the vaccines and hesitancy. I had a chance to do this with our Seahawks recently. Kyle Fuller is one of their younger players who actually recently just had COVID. And him and I were going back and forth about questions that he was having. He had concerns about getting the vaccine, and he posted about it on Twitter ultimately. And I appreciated him doing it. But it's just to say that, as with the Mariners or with other workforces, if you lead with stories, if you try to reach, in this case, Kyle, we talked a lot about other younger patients of mine, athletes in some cases, who came down with COVID, who didn't get the vaccine. And then they started experiencing longer term symptoms, because COVID, we know, can cause short-term symptoms and long-term symptoms. And for some of these athletes, they weren't able to get back on the field. Providing that type of context here for Kyle was really helpful, because his primary goal was, well, hey, doc, I want to be ready for training so that we can be ready for game one come the fall. And so that was really the kicker there for him, recognizing that he was vulnerable to longer term impacts from his COVID infection if he didn't get the vaccine. Because now we're recognizing actually that the vaccine can help mitigate these longer term potential symptoms from COVID. I know I don't have a ton of time with all of y'all, so I'm going to try to wrap this up, but I did want to share from my own training in comms. I had a chance to study comms when I was towards the tail end of my medical school training. And this example from Steve Jobs, if you haven't heard his 2005 Stanford commencement address, I strongly encourage you to YouTube it at your first opportunity, because he's a maestro at storytelling. And he uses a tactic called the rule of threes, where you divide your story or message into three parts. You keep the message short and sweet, and you have one consistent message. In his case, it was do what you love. Really encourage you to listen to Steve Jobs and that commencement address, as I would encourage you to listen to these two presidential addresses that are really masterclasses in how you demonstrate and convey empathy. Channeling empathy is going to be vital, especially for those of you in a spokesperson role for organizations or for governments. This is such a critical skill. So encourage you to watch President Obama's at least the first 15 minutes of his eulogy for Reverend Clementi Pinckney, and for President Reagan and his address to the country after the Challenger disaster back in the mid-1980s. Again, just incredible demonstration of how a leader, of how a communicator can demonstrate empathy in real, tangible ways. Such an obvious strategy, you might think, but really hard to do in practice well. So encourage you to look at those videos. And then lastly, never forget to stay hopeful. All of you are going to be entering a world that's complicated, that's been traumatized by a major pandemic. We have issues across a range of other complicated topics like social justice, access to voting rights, you name it, climate change, vaccine inequity and vaccine apartheid that's setting in. I mean, you're entering the workforce in a really complicated time that affords amazing opportunities for all of you that are going to be leaders in communication potentially. I mean, this is exactly the right time to actually be entering the workforce in your chosen profession. But you don't want to forget that it's vital to stay hopeful. It's really critical. Because nobody, just like I was talking about earlier when it came to giving actionable advice, nobody just wants to hear doomsday scenarios. They want help and they want hope. So always remember to message on that. And then lastly, I'll say, at least in communications for health related issues, there's going to be more opportunities for all of you in ways in which there were not opportunities for folks like myself coming up the ranks. There are going to be some incredible opportunities available for you to really sink your teeth in to crisis communication seminars like this one that I'm leading at the Aspen Institute is just one example of a greater recognition for better communication capabilities across a range of different sectors in society, including healthcare. I think now more than ever, we've realized that we need more communicators in the public health space, not less. It's been a bleak last 16 months, but gosh, you are going to be the leaders that guide us through future crises, future epidemics, you name it. We need more people like you. So there's going to be a job market out there that's going to be craving your skill sets. Younger people that are mission oriented, that have the right skill sets to be able to communicate complex topics to the lay public. I'm really excited to watch all of you grow and to learn from you. I'm here if you need any help. Again, vgupta@uw.edu. Congratulations. Enjoy this day and your accomplishments that are yet to come. I'm really rooting you guys on. Have a great day.
Hello again. Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Finally, I'd like to introduce my dear colleague, Kaylee Cook, who in addition to being a beloved teacher in our journalism program, also serves as our undergraduate program chair. This is an incredibly challenging role, which involves curriculum planning, managing the applications to our major, and much, much more. I'm so grateful to have Kaylee's expert administrative prowess and easygoing personality in this important role. On top of all this, Kaylee is an award-winning journalist and documentary filmmaker with an impressive and wide-ranging body of work covering topics such as crime, the courts, sports, music, theater, and more. Welcome, Kaylee.
Congratulations, class of 2021. Well, I would rather be talking to you out on the quad today, underneath those cherry blossoms we all know so well, looking out towards Red Square on our campus. I'm so honored to be able to talk to you here today. Your accomplishments deserve so much recognition, a spotlight, and the celebratory energy equal to the years of work you put in to get this far. You're graduates, and we see you. Nothing ever seems poignant enough to fully recognize the kind of effort one expends to get to where you are right now. As faculty, we're there with you, and we see you each quarter. In the lectures, the office hours, the essays, the exams, the quizzes, the other side of those long study nights. We saw you struggle, and sometimes fail, only to come out the other side, more wise, patient, and informed. We saw your curiosity as you tackled new ways of thinking, new methods, new challenges. We saw your fears and your doubts, and they turned into confidence and mastery. We saw you ace that quiz. We heard you ask those really hard questions during class. We saw you triumph and look back on your quarter, overflowing with new knowledge. We see you. More than anything, I want you to know that we bore witness to your fight. For that dream internship, for understanding, for inclusion, for change, for kindness, for a better world, for a place where we communicate more effectively, all of those things. We want you to know that we see you and will remember all the ways that you made our community, our university, and our world a much better place. Many of you are embarking on a journey into the professional world at a time in which we hope it's the tail end of a pandemic. And you'll need all this fight to make your way in that world. Hopefully you learned all about positive resilience here at UW, but you've always had those tools because you got yourself here. To get to a special place like UW-COM, you conquered many obstacles. This class specifically, you earned your spot on this podium, and I'll miss this class. I have special memories of teaching so many of you and hearing all of your stories. I'll remember one graduate story of pushing to carve his own path in sports journalism. I'll remember him agonizing over every word in his story, trying to capture the drama of the touchdown, the pain of the playoff loss, the triumph of the 9th inning double play. I'll remember how he worked so hard to tell stories that mean so much to him and to the thousands of readers he touched. I'll remember another graduate's visit to my office hours. I'll remember it because he told me what his education meant to him, how he was going to be the first in his family to graduate college. He told me about his mother looking at his email and seeing that he'd made the dean's list, printing it out and putting it on the outside of his front door for everyone to see. I'll remember another graduate's story of service as she spent the equivalent of a full-time job each week volunteering to feed others. I'll remember her describing the shifts at the shelter and how one longtime resident would help her study each evening as everyone tucked in for the night. I'll remember so many graduates just like you for all the good you've done and all the good you will do. One thing I know I regret from my college years is a singular vision, the kind of goal-oriented tunnel vision that eliminates superfluous information from your field of view. When you're sprinting towards a singular goal, it's easy to miss the stopovers and the details on the way. I couldn't tell you anything about my own college graduation 20 years ago, mostly because I didn't allow myself to pause, to consider, and to experience that moment fully. I was already sprinting off to my next step, my new job, the love of my life, my new title as a professional person in the real world, as I'm sure many of you are now. And you probably know what I mean. You see your goal in the future, and you're good at overcoming all the obstacles to get there because we trained you to. But my wish for you would be that you would not see just the goal on the horizon, but the path you're taking to get there. Notice all these details today, the way it feels right now to be a graduate. Don't miss the contours of this deeply meaningful moment. I hope you can remember all these details in 2021 so that decades from now, you can tell your family or your chosen family all about the ways it marked you as a person, all the ways it changed you, challenged you, made you better. Because we're living in a historic moment. So, do all the ambitious things you're dreaming about. that dream job, becoming famous, leading the free world, remedying injustice, falling in love. But as you're sprinting towards those goals, those finish lines, look down, look around, notice all the details around you right now, at least to the extent that you can. Notice the world as it is and the way that you're contributing to make it better. Being present in these moments is about refusing to consider the world as trivial. It positions you to ask the big questions later on, to see your life as a steady continuum of choices and all the adventures that are yet to come. And someday in 20 or 40 or 80 years, you'll look back and you'll remember these moments, like today, when you were present, and I hope you'll say it was absolutely luminous. We have never been so proud of you, and we are rooting for you. Congratulations, class of 2021.